And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to hear from our speaker today, and I know you'll welcome him as well. It's time for our featured speaker, Afdhel Aziz. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Afdhel is a leading expert in marketing innovation who worked with Procter Gamble, Heineken, Absolut, and Nokia. Highlighted by Forbes as one of the top 3 marketing innovation labs to emulate in the world, he is currently the founder and chief creative officer of Conspiracy of Love, a think tank and an idea incubator that helps Fortune 500 brands use culture and technology as a force for good. What a concept that is. Let's watch this video and learn a little bit more.
I want to tell you a story. It begins in Sri Lanka, the country that I was born in. This is what it looked like on the morning of December 26, 2004. A massive tsunami hit the island. I was back there for my brother's wedding. Like many of my fellow countrymen, I got involved in the relief operations in the days and weeks that followed. And I was diagnosed with a particular form of post-traumatic stress disorder called survivor guilt. And I started to think about whether the work I was doing had any meaning. I knew how to do marketing and advertising, but I didn't want my life's legacy to be that I just made people buy more stuff. That was the beginning of the journey that led me here today.
I'm here with my buddy, Afdhel Aziz.
I've been working on a book with my fellow Brooklynite and co-author Bobby Jones called Good is the New Cool.
Good is the New Cool is a book about a new model of marketing where brands can make money and do good by harnessing the power of cool.
What is the higher order reason for this brand or this company to exist more than making money?
Idea number 1, making the good but lead with the cool. Today, it's no longer enough for a brand just to be good. It must have great design. It must have a great story. It must be an object of desire. Think about citizens, not consumers. I think if you only think about people as consumers, you're condemned to have a transactional relationship with them. So my challenge to you is when you walk out of these doors, how will you apply some of these ideas and lessons to what you do?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Afdhel Aziz.
Hey Mark, thank you so much. Welcome. Hello. Hello, good morning everybody. Man, I wish I had a video like that play every time I walked into a room. I don't think my wife would let me do that though. Hello Atlanta, it's nice to be here with you today. Thank you to the NAA for inviting me here. I'm super excited to talk to you guys. You guys do a tremendous amount of good. Let me just say that first, right off the bat as well. I love the fact that 120 of you guys are heading to the Atlanta Food Bank right after this to go do some good. Give them a round of applause, please. From what I can understand, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The association was kind enough to share some statistics with me, and it looks like in between cash, in-kind donations, and volunteer hours worked, about $157 million worth of good is done by you guys every year. That deserves a round of applause, come on. That's pretty incredible. So, it shows you the power of what you can do when you pull together. So today I'm going to talk to you about Good is the New Cool, the book that I wrote with my friend and co-author Bobby Jones, but I'll start by telling you how it all came about. So I've been a client-side marketer all my life. I've worked inside large multinational corporations, Procter Gamble, Nokia, when there was a company called Nokia, Heineken, and then Absolut. And I loved marketing. I loved what I did. I loved advertising and the craft of it. But it was beginning to get a little bit dull and repetitive. And then in 2004, I was back in Sri Lanka, the country that I was born in, for my brother's wedding. If you don't know Sri Lanka, it's at the tip of the Indian Ocean. It's like an Asian Hawaii. It is beautiful. You should totally go and visit there sometime. But on this particular instance, it was the day after Christmas 2004, and that was the day that the Asian tsunami hit that whole Indian Ocean area. And I was safe. I was in the capital city, Colombo, so I was totally unharmed. But I woke up in one morning where 30,000 of my fellow countrymen had just died. And it was a sobering, traumatic experience. Like a lot of people in that country, I got involved in the relief efforts, doing what we could to find food, shelter, rations. And it kind of passed in a blur those next 7 or 10 days. I went back to London where I lived, quit my job, I went traveling around the world, and I started to think about what I did for a living and whether any of it mattered, whether it mattered to those people whose lives had been affected by that tragedy. And I started to realize that I didn't want my legacy to be that I just made people buy more stuff. That wasn't enough. So that was really the beginning of the journey that I went on with my friend and co-author, Bobby Jones, oh, here we go. This is Bobby and me sitting on the front steps of my house in Brooklyn. He's a great friend of mine. He's one of the smartest people I know. And we were both in this place as marketers. He was working on the agency side. We were stuck. We were looking for inspiration. And what we decided to do was go on a journey to really go out there and talk to people who were doing inspiring things, really motivational things, in the fields of business, in the field of culture, the field of nonprofits as well. And so we wrote this book really because our purpose is to serve you guys. We wrote it to inspire the world changers, people who want to use business and culture as a force for good. And I hope today some of the lessons you've learned will help you on your journey. So it culminated in this book, which came out in October of last year, which was our #1 new release on Amazon in philanthropy and charity, and really was the start of this roller coaster ride that has brought me here today. So I'm going to play a little video now to show you a little bit about what the book is.
Ad blockers are already at the top of the charts.
So, yeah, okay, great, yes. Applaud the video, yeah. Why not? Thank you, goodbye. That's it, I'm done now. Hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a flavor of what's to come and what some of the lessons we're going to talk about today. So, the first thing that we did when we started this journey was ask ourselves this question: what was happening around us? We saw this really interesting thing where the coolest brands in the world were also the ones doing the most good. So if you think about Tesla in cars, if you think about fashion brands like Warby Parker, Tom's, Patagonia, if you think about CPG, companies like The Honest Company or Method, in every single category, brands were doing well by doing good, and they were some of the most aspirational and coolest brands out there. We thought, this is really interesting. This is something we haven't seen before. This wasn't limited to small brands. This was also something that we saw with major multinationals. So this is from the Unilever Sustainable Brands Report. So Unilever, one of the biggest conglomerates in the world. Last year, more than half of their growth came from sustainable brands. In fact, I think this year it went up to 70%. So these are brands like Dove, Knorr, Hellmann's, Lipton's. At Unilever, doing good and sustainability is no longer a moral conversation, it's an economic conversation. They see the power in being able to use social impact to drive the value of their brands. The next thing that we noticed was really interesting with the architects of cool. So all of those people out there who drive culture, the musicians, the filmmakers, the athletes, the celebrities, they were becoming activists. So whether it was Beyonce at the Super Bowl talking about Black Lives Matter, Kendrick Lamar at the Grammys talking about the same, Lady Gaga at the Oscars talking about sexual assault, LeBron James at the ESPYs. These are some of the biggest names in pop culture using the biggest moments in pop culture to talk about issues. And we hadn't seen that since maybe the 60s as well. And the final piece of the puzzle was the nonprofit world as well. Now, I'm a huge fan of nonprofits like Amnesty International or Greenpeace, who have been doing amazing work for decades. But what we were seeing was a new breed of nonprofits that were using culture and data and technology in brand new ways. Global Citizen was throwing concerts on the Central Park lawn featuring Beyonce and Pearl Jam in order to raise awareness and funds. Pencils of Promise partners with Justin Bieber to raise money to build schools. Charity Water builds wells at the rate of about 1 every 90 hours. So there's something happening where these new nonprofits were also moving faster than ever before. So that's where we decided to focus our interrogation around this intersection of what we call commerce, conscience, and culture. There's something really interesting happening in the middle there. And our theory is they each have something that the other wants. The brands have resources and reach. The nonprofits have that depth of knowledge to solve problems. And the artists bring the cool. The artists are able to galvanize people to take action through the power of storytelling, through the power of design as well. So I'm going to walk you through some of the lessons we learned by talking to these folks. Now, why is all this important? I call this next section my CFO slides. If you need to convince your CFO that social impact is good, please use these slides. Number one, social activism is now the second biggest driver of brand strength. Cool is number one, leading edge is number one. Social activism is the second biggest driver of brand strength. People want the brands in their lives to stand up for their values and show those values very clearly. Number two, social responsibility builds wealth. This is an analysis of the S&P 500, and the brands that spent more money on CSR, sustainability, cause marketing, outperformed the rest of the S&P 500 by 26%. So social responsibility can drive shareholder value as well. This is a pretty interesting stat. This is the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company. It has shrunk from 67 years to 15 years. And companies are dying out. I know I worked for one of them. When I joined Nokia, it was the biggest mobile phone manufacturer in the world. And 5 years later, through no fault of my own, I should add, it had become an ingredient brand that's part of Microsoft, right? So I'm seeing this happen in real time, that giant companies can fall. Look what's happening to Uber right now in real time. You see the speed of destruction that happens. Our thesis is that those companies that don't have a higher order purpose, that don't really add value to people's lives in an authentic, meaningful, decent way, they're not going to survive. They're not going to be around. The good news is that when you look at the resources to help solve some of these problems, by an order of magnitude, they're concentrated in those corporations. So this is Professor Michael Porter, TED.com. Nonprofits, 1.2 trillion. Governments, 3.1 trillion in revenue. Corporations, $20.1 trillion. The power lies in those corporations, and if you guys work for those corporations, then by extension, the power lies in this room. You have the ability to use those resources to do a tremendous amount of good. So, why was all this happening? We dug deep and we came up with 3 reasons. We call them the generational, the technological, and the spiritual. So I'll start with the first one. Millennials and Gen Z have higher expectations of the brands in their lives. A couple of stats. 64% of them won't take a job if a potential employer doesn't have a strong CSR capability. 85% of Gen Z employees believe companies have an obligation, I'll repeat that word, an obligation to help solve social problems. So if you want to attract the best talent and future-proof your organizations for the next 2 generations, you better make sure you have a strong core belief and practices that show how you contribute to society. Shifting to the consumer side, there's a lot of stats I could throw at you, but this is my favorite. The global annual spending power of millennials is $2.5 trillion, and 95% of them say they would switch brands to one that supported a good cause. That's the size of the prize out there. We talk about this as not as corporate social responsibility. This is corporate social opportunity. The opportunity to solve some of the world's biggest problems are also ways in which to stay relevant, attract the right talent, attract the right consumers as well. For both of those generations, it's really summed up in this great quote from the writer Ann Lapper. Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want. They're voting with their wallets. They're really thinking hard about the watch they wear, the shoes they wear, the glasses they wear, probably the apartments that they rent too. So you need to keep that in mind when thinking about how to talk to these folks and attract them. Okay, the second one is technology. And I love this because I spent 20 years doing marketing and signing off media plans and TV commercials and things like that, and it's not working anymore. We say technology is disrupting the advertising business like it disrupted the music business. Do you guys remember what happened when Napster came along and completely disintermediated record labels and conventional business? That's happening to advertising at the moment. So hands up here if you don't have a conventional cable or satellite package and just use Apple TV, Netflix, Hulu, HBO. All right, a fair few of you, probably mostly millennials. I have this at home. I have an Apple TV with HBO, Hulu, Netflix, and my 3-year-old son gets mad at me when he has to watch an ad on YouTube. In fact, he just yells at me. He doesn't understand what it is. And I saw a stat last week which said 82% of kids in Netflix-only homes don't even understand what a TV ad is, conceptually. They're growing up in a world where their TV screen doesn't show them any ads. Oh, but digital is going to be our savior, you say. Well, not so much. This is the global rise of ad blocking software. So this is very simple software. You can download it onto your phone from the iOS or Android app stores. It blocks all ads on your phone, your laptop, on your desktop. So what happens to marketers if we're making things that nobody's seeing on any of those screens? What is marketing at that point? And we have a few suggestions, by the way, so it's not all doom and gloom. But we think this is what led to the third thing that we noticed, the crisis of meaningfulness in marketing. And certainly it's what started us writing this book. And the more we talked to people, the more we found that we weren't alone. In fact, there is this great survey that Adobe did. They asked people to list the 4 least valuable professions to humanity. I'll let that settle in for a second here. Marketing and advertising, number 1. By the way, PR professional is down there as well, in case anybody in PR you thought you were getting off lightly. Now here's the really mind-blowing thing. The blue is consumers, the yellow is people who work in marketing. 35% of marketers, when asked, said, yep, I don't think what I do is useful to humanity at all. That blew our minds. And we have this great friend of ours, Jeff Benjamin. He's an amazing creative director. And he puts it another way. He said he was watching the movie Deep Impact. Do you guys remember that movie? Asteroid movie hitting the Earth. And there's this scene where they built a mountain shelter. And they're taking the best minds of the planet, the doctors and the engineers and the scientists, and they're putting them into the mountain. And Jeff is watching this movie going, they're probably not putting any people from advertising in there. They're probably not saying, you know what we needed here? More brand managers or more marketers. So he put it really sweetly. He said, how do we as an industry do work that gets us into the mountain? Which I really love. So we went out there and we tried to look at who was creating these new models that were really inspiring. And this was a 3.5-year journey. It was fascinating. And these were the 21 people that we interviewed in the book. The book, by the way, is available on Amazon, and if anybody wants to get it, that's the fastest way. And each chapter is a story about these people, because we realized it was about people and the work that they did, more than about brands or brand strategy. And each of them are on this journey to find purpose and meaning in their work. And each of them have found parts of the puzzle that we found really interesting. So we talked to people like Scooter Braun, who manages Justin Bieber and Kanye. Mimi Valdez, who is Pharrell's creative director. Amazing woman. She's the one who does projects like Hidden Figures for Pharrell. We talked to people like Bobby Gamble, who manages Lady Gaga from the music side. From the brand side, we talked to The Honest Company, Zappos, Citibank, Warby Parker, all these brands who are doing really interesting things. And then we talked to folks from the nonprofit sector as well. And we distilled it down to this model. And by the way, I think we're going to make this presentation available to all you guys, so feel free to just, if you're taking notes, know this will be on its way to you. We think this is a 21st century way of doing business. It's almost like if you ripped up the rule book and just started right now, how would you create a brand and how would you market that brand? And we think that this works with any type of brand, whether you're a brand new startup or a Fortune 500 company who's been around for a couple of hundred years. So I'm going to walk you through these 7 steps and talk to you about what they mean as well. So, number 1 is know your purpose. And this really applies on 2 levels. One is knowing your own personal purpose, what you were put here to do, and how you're going to spend your time doing it. If you haven't gone on this journey, I would highly encourage you to do that. It is one of the most profound things you can do, is to understand how your gifts, your passions, your skill set can help others, can be of service to others. Purpose is always about being of service to something bigger than you. It could be an idea, it could be a community, it could be your team. The second type of purpose is brand purpose or organizational purpose, which is defined as the higher order reason to exist more than just making money. All too often, when personal purpose and organizational purpose are out of sync, that's when you see a lot of stress. But in those organizations where the two are aligned, these are some of the most successful organizations in the world. So I can't overestimate how important purpose is as the foundational first step for any company thinking about this. In fact, we say purpose is so important that it is the 5th P of marketing. For those of you who know the 4 Ps in marketing, it's product, price, place, promotion. We say if you don't know the purpose, the why you exist, how can you know the other 4? How can you know what product to make, what price to price it at as well? It's a foundational element in every business. We interviewed Matthew Clough, who runs an amazing company called Stone & Cloth. They make backpacks and bags, and the money from that goes back to children's education in Africa. And he said this really great quote: "Truly deep down inside, everyone wants to be part of something bigger than themselves." A great example of a company that's done this right is Tesla. This is Tesla's purpose, if you go and look on their website: to accelerate the planet's transition to sustainable energy. Wow. Imagine going to work every day going, that's what I'm doing. It's such a higher order thing. It's not, let's make X million dollars by Q3. It is so much bigger than that. Now, Tesla do make a lot of money, though. This is the Tesla Model 3. This is the cheapest offering they have, $35,000. When it was launched, they had 400,000 pre-orders in 2 days, generating $8 billion worth of sales, just like that. Because they had people who who believed in Tesla's mission about accelerating the transition to fossil fuels. So for people to put their money down, it wasn't just because it was a beautiful car, it was because it meant something bigger about who they were as people. And by the way, this is no longer limited to cars. I'm sure you guys saw this. Tesla is moving into solar roof tiles, which gather sunlight, and solar batteries. So if you look to the left of the car in there, you'll see the Tesla Powerwall, which solves the problem of where to store all that solar power once you get it during the day. Tesla wants to be on your roof. They want to be in in your Powerwall in your house. They want to be in your car. They want to be the Apple of clean energy. They're not just taking on General Motors, they're taking on Con Edison. One purpose, many missions, but all towards accelerating the planet's transition to sustainable energy as well. Does that make sense? Everybody get the example? Cool. So, once you have a super clear purpose, number 2 is find your allies. Find those folks who have common purpose to you. If you're a brand, it could be a nonprofit, it could be an entertainer, but somewhere out there, somebody has that same mission, and you are stronger together. A great example of a platform that does this really well is Omaze. So hands up everybody who knows Omaze. A few folks, okay. Omaze is a fundraising platform where celebrities can go on with amazing experiences that anybody can bid on for $10. This is an experience where, as I'm not kidding, George Clooney would take you on a date and compliment you for 45 seconds. Looking deep into your eyes, ladies, sincerely, I think this is before Amal, by the way, but sincerely, like, it better be before Amal, because otherwise Amal will be in trouble. They were able to raise a couple of $1 million for Clooney's foundation through this experience as well. They were able to leverage that allies of Clooney's fan base, the Omaze community, and bring them all together. A more successful one, even than that, was what Omaze did with Star Wars and UNICEF. So when the new Star Wars movie was coming out, Omaze offered people a chance to be in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, to actually have a walk-on part in the movie. And they went out there with some of the stars, like Harrison Ford, to surprise people who had won. And they raised $4.6 million in 3 weeks by leveraging the power of the Star Wars fan base and the community. Find your allies. Find people who believe in that common purpose and bring them together. This is Ryan Cummins from Omaze, who we interviewed for the book. At the end of the day, it's about bringing people together in a way that they're excited to engage and learn and support and give them opportunities to participate. Principle number 3 is think citizens, not consumers. So somewhere along the way, I started to have a problem with the word consumers. When you think about somebody as a consumer, you're only thinking about them in a very one-dimensional way, very transactional way. Whereas if you think about them as citizens with a wide range of things that they care about, suddenly you can have a multi-dimensional conversation with them. The example I'm going to show you is from a paint brand called Dulux. Paint, not the sexiest category in the world, but something that's all around us. And Dulux did this great research which looked at what paint meant to people. And they understood that it meant energy, optimism, a sense of place. And so the Dulux Let's Color project was born, where basically they said to any community around the world, we will give you free paint if you want to paint a neighborhood, community center, car park, staircase, whatever that is. You guys have to do the work, though. We'll give you the paint. So I'm going to play you a short video about some of the stuff that they did.
Make an earthquake. Let's reach to clouds. Make your own lake, let it flow. Throw seeds to sprout. Make your own break, let them grow. Make them grow. Let them grow.
It's a beautiful example, right? Yeah, great piece of work, yeah. Makes me teary every time I watch it. Now, Dulux could have just gone in and painted those neighborhoods themselves, but by making the neighborhood part of the solution, they gave them ownership, and they gave them an ability to participate in it. There have been 1,300 painting parties around the world, every single continent, in Ho Chi Minh City, in Johannesburg, and what's amazing is that it keeps growing as a way to remember what the paint brand did. Fernanda Romero was the creative director we interviewed. She was the one behind it. And she told us about how she was actually there in Rajasthan, India, where you saw, and she was standing in the middle of the street and there's paint dripping on her hair and her clothes, and she had never been so happy because she was connected to these people and what she was doing. And she said if people weren't part of it, they had no ownership of it. Think about what happens every time that person walks down the street and remembers the street that they painted with the help of that brand. It's going to stay in their minds way longer than any billboard or out of home ever will as well. So I think it's a really cool example. Okay, the next principle is lead with the cool. This is the coolest man on the planet, Pharrell. And we interviewed Mimi Valdez, his creative partner. And the example is here to illustrate a really important point. In the first generation of brands that were doing good, didn't have to worry about cool that much. You could slap an Earth logo on it and say we're made of hemp, and people would probably buy you. Today, that doesn't work anymore. You need to have cool baked into whatever you're selling. The reason people are buying Tesla cars is they're cool first. The reason they're buying Warby Parker glasses are they're cool first. The good is baked into them as well. A more recent example is this work that Adidas did with Parley for the Oceans. I work with Adidas at the moment. In fact, we had an all-day workshop yesterday in Brooklyn with them. They're doing amazing work. Parley is a company that pulls ocean waste, plastic ocean waste out of the oceans, and then with the help of Adidas, they turn them into shoes. So those shoes you're seeing on the bottom left-hand corner are made from ocean waste. I'll play you a short video about what that looks like.
We made an incredible, moldable, indestructible material, but when we dump it, it doesn't go away. Now 1 truck of it ends up in our oceans every minute. It's killing sea life. The fish eat the trash, then we eat the fish. We're feeding ourselves our own garbage, and it's now in our bloodstreams. We've got to avoid plastic, we've got to get it out of the ocean and reuse it. Look, what if we took some trash and made a sports shoe out of it? And then we made 1 million more from 11 million plastic bottles. What if that was just the start? And what if everyone did that?
So that idea launched last year with 7,000 shoes, which sold out in, oh, sorry, can we go back one? Sorry. Thank you. Version 1 sold out in 24 hours, 7,000 shoes. This is version 2, which went on sale 3 weeks ago. This is part of 1 million shoes that are all made out of ocean waste. I wear them every day. They're super comfortable. Each shoe has 12 plastic bottles in them, and they retail for $280. All of that money goes back in to pulling more ocean waste out of the ocean. Adidas is also committed to removing plastic from its entire supply chain, No more plastic in its stores, in its offices, anywhere. It's a huge statement of what they want to do. But if the shoes weren't cool first, nobody would buy them. So that's the message I think I want to leave you with. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you have great aesthetics, great storytelling, great design, fronting it, and then baking the good on the back as well. This is Jason Maiden, who we interviewed, who was actually a Nike sneaker designer as well. And he talks about how the mindset of an innovator is to help solve the biggest problem that helps the most people. That's what we mean by saying this is not about corporate social responsibility anymore. This is about corporate social opportunity. The biggest opportunities for growth lie in solving the world's biggest problems. A great example I'm going to show you next. This next principle is don't advertise, solve problems. It's saying, okay, if you know your purpose, you know your citizens, think about the problems in your life and their lives that you can help solve. In fact, we say that brands should solve problems from the everyday to the epic. When you think about this space, a lot of people think about the epic stuff, climate change, global warming, income inequality. But there's a whole host of problems on the everyday end of the scale that brands can get involved in fixing. One of the people we interviewed for the book was Alyssa Gray, the CMO of Citibank, who told us about the City Bike project. So hands up here, anybody who's used a City Bike. The blue bikes in New York City, okay, a few of you guys. They are on every single street corner in New York City. But in 2011, when the mayor's office approached Citibank to participate, it was a $41 million 6-year deal. There was a little bit of hesitation on the part of Citibank to commit to this. I'm glad that they did, because what happened was pretty miraculous. Citibank, first of all, had the greatest media buy in the history of New York City, because these bikes are everywhere, and people are tweeting and Instagramming about them all day long. Citi had 18% jumps in brand consideration. Citi is a bank for me. Citi is a bank I trust because of this program as well. So I'm going to play you a short video about the Citi Bike program.
Do I have any memorable biking experiences?
The day I got my membership key in the mail, I was pretty excited. I was like a puppy with a new toy.
I love it when I get into sequences with the green lights on the street and how quick I was able to get to work.
Yesterday, actually, the metro was down, and I used the Citi Bike to get home.
I've been to New York a lot in my life and with business, and I never in my life thought I'd cycle down Fifth Avenue. That was really nice.
Recently, my boyfriend and I went, and he met me here, and we rode on the waterfront, and we sat down and got ice cream, and it just was, I saw parts of the city that I had never seen before.
So we've been pretty much everywhere, up to Central Park, across Brooklyn Bridge, Soho.
It gives me a better sense of the connectivity of all the neighborhoods. I've lived here for 16 years, but you see things in patches because the subway connects you.
From my restaurant to my gym, there's no subway across town in this section, so bike is perfect.
I'm used to just going from the train to my work, but on the bike you actually get the chance to see the city, and it's just beautiful.
I've always been a big fan of alternative transport, and New York's one of the most crowded cities in the world, and I've driven in New York, and it's really hard work. I think every day that I'm in Manhattan, which is 3-4 days a week, I'm using it.
The bikes are pretty sturdy, the gears are good, the bell is good. A lot of the time this is a lot more convenient than my own bike.
I think it's an A+ as far as impacting the environment.
I think it's a great, sustainable, green way to explore New York.
I think it's really great for exercise, especially for curvy girls and people who want to get better in shape. It's easy for you to ride it for short periods of time and get comfortable with the bike.
I lost 4 pounds since the bike start because I rode it every day.
It's also fun, I look forward to going out and going, oh great, I have a meeting now. I have to get up to the 50s or across. I think great, I can get out on the bike and it's fun.
I have mentioned to people I just arrived on the bike and it was so cool.
I love that British guy. Yeah. I love that British guy. Makes me think he should be like Monty Python or something like that. But it's a great success story. I believe City are rolling it out to other cities as well. As you see the problem with the infrastructure in this country, this kind of public-private partnerships, I think, are really what the salvation should be. It works for the brand, it works for the community, it works for the people. It's a win-win-win. And Alyssa, who was the CMO we interviewed, she told me her favorite part was people would stop her in the hallway and say, please, can I come and work on this project with you? Because people became personally involved in their work. It wasn't anonymous, it was something that benefited them right there where they lived as well. So it was really powerful for employee engagement as well. Okay, final two principles. People are the new media. Word of mouth is the #1 driver of any business, and today, you know, because of social media, you can spread faster and quicker than ever before. But in order to win that word of mouth, you have to do something remarkable. You have to create something remarkable as well. And these next guys did just this. So hands up anybody who saw this, the edible six-pack rings. Couple of folks. All right, this is my favorite stories. We interviewed my friend Marco Vega, who runs a small agency called We Believers, and they had gotten a brief from a tiny Florida brewery called Saltwater, who are really into ocean conservancy. And Saltwater was like, we don't have a lot of money, but we want to do something really meaningful. What can you do? And Marco and his team of engineers and lab rats figured out a way to take the waste products from wheat and barley used in making the beer and turn them into edible six-pack rings. So instead of the plastic six-pack rings, these things are now biodegradable and edible. So I'll play you a short video to talk about it now.
Saltwater is a small craft brewery from Delray Beach, Florida, whose primary target are surfers, fishermen, and people who love the sea. That's why instead of doing a low-budget campaign, we decided to make a statement, investing to create a replacement for plastic six-pack rings, because most of them end up in the ocean.
Around the world, an estimated 1 million seabirds and 100,000 marine mammals and sea turtles become entrapped in plastic or ingested and die.
A lot of people think just cutting up the old plastic six-pack holders is enough, but experts say wildlife will still eat the little pieces of plastic, killing them.
A Florida brewery is changing up the six-pack in hopes of saving the lives of animals.
They're finding a way to put an end to these old plastic holders.
Saltwater Brewery presents edible six-pack rings. A six-pack ring that feeds animals instead of killing them.
This is such a cool idea. Now, the holder is actually crafted from the byproducts that are made in the brewing process. Look at that. It is 100% biodegradable.
Immediately, people embraced the idea. And the media reacted in a massive way.
Edible six-pack rings that feed instead of kill marine life if they end up in the ocean.
With $0 media dollars invested, in less than 5 days, edible six-pack rings took over social media with more than 105 million views and over 1.8 million Facebook shares. We got over 3.5 billion global impressions, transforming a small brewery into a beacon for the industry to follow and challenging the big guys to save hundreds of thousands of marine lives.
We want to influence the big guys and kind of inspire them to also get on board.
Pretty cool, huh? So Marco said what happened in the weeks that followed them releasing this one video, which cost $26,000, was incredible. So they had global reach with this idea, but even better, every single brewer on the planet contacted them and said, we would like to make this the industry standard. Anheuser-Busch, SAB Miller, Heineken, they all reached out and said, we want this to become the way the whole beer industry operates. They're actually setting up a whole new factory in Monterrey, Mexico, just to make these things for the whole industry now, which is yeah, that deserves a round of applause. Yeah. This is Marco. He's such a humble guy, but he says, we are facing an era when humanity will shed those brands whose products do not solve the need And I couldn't agree with him anymore. The final principle here is back up the promise with the proof. And what's happening is you're seeing a lot of brands get into this space and talk about good without having anything to back it up. A raging dumpster fire recently was Pepsi. So did you guys see this ad, the Pepsi ad with Kendall Jenner that came out? Pepsi released an ad that talked about civil rights with zero credibility and zero permission to speak in that space. They were writing a check when they had nothing in the bank against that check, and that's why there was such outrage against it. So when we work through my consultancy, Conspiracy of Love, when we advise brands, we say start small, start slowly, put some money in the bank first before you guys start writing checks. Because today, consumers can call bullshit on you. They can see right through your marketing and see exactly how much money you're spending on advertising and how much money you're spending on doing good. So you can't fake it anymore. You have to make sure you show the proof of what you do every day. A great example of a brand that's been doing this recently was State Farm. And so I don't know if you guys saw this, but I love this. So State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is here. It's always been about neighborhoods, right? And they commissioned this survey around the state of neighbors. It's publicly available, you can get it online. And I talked to the guys there, and they found these really interesting insights. Millennials aren't connecting, but they want to. They're so stuck inside their phones and screens, they're craving face-to-face interaction, especially with neighbors, but they don't know how to do it. That old thing of, hey, somebody's moved into the neighborhood, let's bake them a pie and go say hi, it's not happening. It's not normal anymore. The neighborhood gathering is organized by a dedicated few. So it's more and more difficult for this to become scalable if there's only a tiny contingent who take that trouble. Welcoming is important, but not happening. That's the pie move that I'm talking about as well. So they realized that what they stood for, neighborliness, was eroding. They also did a survey around volunteering, and they realized there were similar problems there. People want to volunteer. People have a natural sense of altruism, want to give back. The biggest barriers come down to time constraints and tough schedules. People say, I'm just too busy, or I don't have enough time. People volunteer because they value helping others, but it's also part of being a good neighbor. By helping out in your neighborhood, you start to build links into where you live, right? Neighborhoods, therefore, have the most to gain from volunteerism as well. So they put all of this stuff together, and they launched this brilliant campaign called Neighborhood for Good. So this is a website, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but you can go in there, you can, in the drop-down menu, indicate what you care about. Could be Veterans Affairs, could be the homeless, could be animal shelters. And then you plug in your zip code, and it will tell you in 2 seconds what opportunities exist around you to get involved. For 1 hour a week, half an hour a week, 3 hours a week, whatever time you have, it can correlate that to what is available and what is needed out there as well. In the first week, they had 100,000 people use this, and the numbers are only going up. It shows what happens when you create things that allow people to participate. You unlock a tremendous amount of good as well. There's a great book I'm reading, A Selfish Plan to Save the World, by a guy called Justin Dillon. You should highly get it. In it, he summarizes this idea so simply. He says, half the people in the world are suffering from a poverty of means. They don't have things, food, shelter, education. The other half are suffering from a poverty of meaning. They have food and shelter and education, but their lives lack substance. Their lives lack service. And the solution is creating things which solve both problems at the same time. This is a problem that solves both of those problems at the same time. It allows people who have means but not meaning to give back in ways which I think are really powerful. It really speaks to this last quote from Laura Probst, who is the head of social goodness at The Honest Company. People need to feel like I made a difference, like I moved the needle. If that feedback loop is missing, then all too often it's easy to get discouraged. So it's really important to build in that ROI mechanic in there as well. So, my final thought to you guys is really this. We are in a moment in history where the opportunities are boundless. The consumers in your lives, or citizens, the employees who want to work for you, they are all looking for something to do that's more meaningful. They're looking for organizations where values drive value. And you guys are in a golden industry to be able to do that. I was thinking about this on the way over. I would say you guys aren't in the business of making buildings or running buildings. I think you guys are in the business of making community, of making neighborhoods. If you can do that, if you can bring people together, I think that could have a really profound impact on everybody around you. I'm going to end with the quote that we asked every single interviewee before we started to interview them. It's a great quote from Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. I hope today you get a little closer to the day you find out why, and I hope today we get a little closer to getting into that damn mountain. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, man. Thank you. Oh. I gotta take a picture of this. Whoa, hold on. This is from my writing partner, Bobby, who couldn't be here. Whoa! Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Afdhel. Great talk. Thank you very much.